Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose, and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life. We're living in a world of chaos and confusion right now, and it's more than anything just showing us that there's a change going on in the world. And you can't see a change in the world and not know that there's a change going on in each and every one of us. And it's really time to look at who we are, look at what we're bringing to the world, and look at how we're fitting in. Today's guest talks about clarity about the magic of you, and really about finding the validation that what you're experiencing in life is really meant to happen, and a validation of who you are and how you're showing up in the world. There's people that see you for the real you. They can see beyond any shell that you might have put up, any protection that's there, because you're not sure if you could be accepted or even understood in the world. Well, our guest today really stepped out there and didn't worry about being accepted, didn't worry about being noticed for who she really was or is. And now she wants to help you do the very same. I'm with Emerald Greenforest today, and Emerald is a multidimensional visionary mentor, artist, and professional speaker. An award-winning entrepreneur for decades and one of America's premier experts. She is the founder and lead visionary of Creative Age Consulting Group, an internationally known speaker and transformation artist that travels all over the United States and internationally speaking and teaching. Executive producer and hostess of the Men on Purpose podcast, which is ranked as a top 200 podcast on iTunes. She's especially passionate about spotlighting, activating, and assisting magnificent men who are called to the vanguard of the creative age. Emerald works with high-achieving leaders who are called to create conscious change. Emerald Greenforest, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
I am. Thank you so much for having me, Vince. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. You know, it seems that always my best guests seem to be the hardest to get all the times worked out. And I'm so excited that we're here today and you get a chance to share you with the imagination.
Well, I love that you are serving the I-Magi nation because magic is definitely part of my repertoire without question.
Yeah, and the world is full of it. We just don't seem to tap into it from time to time. The bio that I shared is so short compared to you and what you're doing in the world. Could you share a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing?
Sure. Well, right now, Vince, I'm really focused on being a support system, like a Merlina, like the Merlin behind the scenes for the king, a Merlina for creative age leaders, because I believe that we're actually at the dawning of the creative age. So if you think about it, we had just for example, we had the Stone Age, and then we had the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and the Agrarian Age and the Industrial Age and the Information Age. And I believe that we are now really at the dawning of what I call the creative age. And what that means is it's, we're coming into a period of time where our creativity and our capacity to connect into the vast creative source is, kind of the primary driver for going forward from here. And so my work is really about helping to support that in leaders, helping them to craft their vision and their messaging, and helping them to really get it out to as many people as possible, because we need creators right now. We need imagination right now. We need innovation right now. And the timing is perfect for it. So that's really what I'm about right now. And I am doing the Men on Purpose podcast, but I want it to be also clear, Vince, that I do a lot of work with women, and in fact spent the last decade primarily serving women entrepreneurs, helping them to feel great speaking and powerful asking for money. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm gender specific, because I do serve across the board. Yeah.
And serve very powerfully, I must say. Could you share with us, the Imagination Group? This is about people who are, just starting to find themselves, opening the door to who they are. Could you share a little bit more of what a creative leader is, so people understand that? Maybe they can start see that blossoming in themselves.
Well, so what I'm really inspired to do right now in response to that question, Vince, is talk about the journey, because I think what happens with people when they do start at the awakening phase, initially when they're in the awakening phase, it's almost a shock, right? It's like, oh my goodness, I get to create my own life, right? And for some, when you awaken, and I'll just use myself as an example, when I had my awakening almost 20 years ago, it was very clear during the awakening process that I was called to be a messenger, called to express myself in the world, and called to be a global messenger. So I was a real estate developer. All of a sudden, I'm like channeling. I am receiving messages from source. I'm activated as a healer, activated as a sound therapist, activated as an author, activated as a speaker, activated in all these ways to just bring out kind of the new energy and the new vision for our reality. And so when we start at the base of this journey, it's kind of like a little mountain. We're in this awakening phase, right? And so we're almost starstruck in that phase, because we don't really know exactly, specifically, and precisely what this actually means, because we have spent most of our lives, generally speaking, socialized and conditioned to behave in certain ways and to follow certain tracks and to, conform to a societal vision. And what the creative age is all about is we are now here to be creating the new vision of what it can be like to live in a world of peace and harmony and joy and creative bliss and full expression.
Oh, that's very, very well said. Tell us a little bit about your awakening.
Oh, so I was, as I said, a real estate developer, and at the end of, I didn't realize it was the end of that career, but I was at the end of that career, and I was actually working with two partners at the time, building 51 single-family houses, 56 apartments, and an office building, and I was the national chairperson for my trade association, and my son was sexually assaulted in daycare. It all happened all at the same time. And, it was kind of like a perfect storm of stress and opening, like really opening. And I remember part of the process for me was I actually injured myself skiing. And after that went to physical therapy and then noticed this yoga class. So I said, to my physical therapist, well, do you think I could do this thing? And he said, sure, just if as long as nothing hurts, if it hurts, don't do it. So I started yoga, and that was really the foundation of my journey in terms of the support system that I acquired. And in that process of going into the yoga world, I started to connect with all these latent parts of myself that I didn't even know existed and hadn't given myself permission to explore. Mm-hmm. And in the openings that happened as a result of opening my physical body, my emotional body started to open. And then this, of course, the spiritual was overseeing the whole thing. And I remember going to a yoga class about 6 months into the practice, maybe not even, maybe 4 months into the practice. And she took us out to the park. And I was lying under a tree in final shavasana, and my third eye burst open. And in the opening of my third eye, I saw, in my mind's eye, I saw golden white orbs of light going up and down this beautiful golden staircase, and angels going. And I was a real estate developer. I was just like, I don't know what this is. This is crazy. This is like cray. And the craziest part of it was when I sat up from the yoga practice and I opened my physical eyes, everyone in the park was a golden white orb of light. And this persisted, this seeing in this way persisted for me for several hours afterwards. And I would literally, even driving down the road, I could see the golden white orbs of light in the cars. And the first thought was, am I going to see like this for the rest of my life? So it was a little crazy and a little wild. And I'm very grateful for the yoga community, because I had a community, thankfully, that, I allowed myself to rest in that community and trust in that community and trust in the practice and trust in my own process. Because if I hadn't had that community, I probably would have taken myself to the psychiatrist and put myself on some kind of mind-altering drugs.
For sure. What was it like sharing with somebody who wasn't in the yoga community, and what kind of reception did you get there?
Yeah, great question, Vince. So that's like the second step as you're going up this mountain. And I use the word awesome, right? So we start at awakening, right? And then the second step is the W in the word awesome. And that's where you're wandering and wondering. Like you're wandering around like, am I the only person who's experiencing this? Are people going to think I'm crazy? There were some people in my life that immediately accepted what was happening. Even though they were not having the same experience, they were so accepting and non-judgmental and supportive. And there were other people in my life that were, not supportive at all. And I actually internally was doing both of those things myself. There was like this internal battle going on of like, oh my God, this is amazing. And what are you, out of your mind? And so, of course, that was reflected by the people who were around me as well.
So as you're sharing with men and women in your work, how do you help them see that part of them?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I offer is validation. And I'll tell you a quick little story, Vince. I think you actually know this person. So there was a woman that I met many years ago when I first joined a mastermind. And it's the same mastermind that I know you from. And when I first joined that mastermind, it was the very first time that the very first retreat of the very first cohort of people in that mastermind, a photographer came to do the photography for us. And when she was coming across the desert to Tucson, where our retreat was being held, she had a spiritual awakening, literally driving across the desert. And when she got there, I was one of the first people to connect with her. And she started to express and tell me what had happened. And she had been contacted by a body of beings that she calls her mother guides. And I affirmed for her. I think the most important thing that I can do is be an affirmer or a validator. Like, this is real. This is true. This is happening. You can trust this. I've had this experience too. You're not out of your mind. And so by helping her to settle into the experience and release some of the fear, it actually allowed her to go on and create a brand new body of work called the Soul Sitters. And she worked with me for several weeks after we, made that first meeting, and I validated her. Then she started to work with me, and she created this epic body of work and a foundation for people who are sitting with their dying loved ones. And, if I had not been perfectly positioned by the universe in that moment to be her validator, this amazing body of work may never have been brought to the world. So yeah, validator, I think, is my main role.
Awesome. What a title. And this is a good place to remind everyone that there are no mistakes or coincidences in the world. And we show up in the right places and the right people are in front of us at the right time. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, maybe you should be thinking about Emerald and what she does in the world, because there are no mistakes or no coincidences. And thanks for reminding me, because I've been trying to get Stacy on this podcast for a while too. So hopefully I can touch base with her and bring her into the world of imagination.
Yeah, I'll put in a good word for you if you need me to, Vince.
Excellent. I don't think I need it, but it's just she's so busy for sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about you. The definition of a miracle at Imagine Miracles is through an act of love, sharing your gifts and talents with the world so others can share theirs. Tell us how you're sharing those gifts of Emerald Greenforest.
Yeah, that's a great question, Vince. And, I think the biggest gift I offer to the world is I really feel like I embody evolution in action. So I think the next piece I want to share with people is that if you are awakening and you're wandering around wondering, kind of the next step is really to explore those places and get education where others of like mind are. And also to understand that this is an evolutionary process. And so evolution is not something that just happens once and then it ends. Evolution is an ongoing thing. So there is no end point to evolution. It's an ongoing process. And I feel like one of the biggest things I offer to the world is a demonstration, a living embodiment of evolution in action, and being capable of being fearless and unattached to anything, including my name, including, my business, including what I'm offering, including any of those things, like just really being able to hold my gifts and express my gifts in the moment in the way that is going to be of highest service and without attachment to any outcomes. So, yeah, I think that's the answer I have for that. Vince.
Well, and that's so powerful. The unattachment, the willingness to allow is such a big part of creation in this world, and being in the creative process is what you are all about. So, the interesting thing, as you said that, what I was thinking is, by example is really how we teach. And you are an example into the world. Who was an example for you?
Well, it's funny because part of the work I have found is going back, being willing to go back to beginner's mind. So in this present moment, Vince, you are an example for me.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you. And you for me. So it's so exciting to have people on the podcast that come from a place where the mindset is changing and growing and expanding, and more importantly, remembering, because we're so in touch with the divine knowledge, and we just need to remember. And it's people like you that help us remember. So thank you. Tell me what the next step is for you that somebody might not know, or maybe nobody knows, and you could share it with my audience for the very first time.
The next step for me, Vince, is really, truthfully, completely unknown. If I knew what the next step was for me, I would certainly be happy to tell you. But I'm actually in that place right now myself of, like, this is part of the practice, right? It's part of the practice to be patient with, what's the next step? Be patient with that question and be willing to hold the question and be in the unknown. And I have found being in the unknown is an immensely powerful place. And it's kind of like, you wouldn't go out into the garden and start ripping the petals off the rose in order to get it to open, you are willing to be patient and allow it to take its natural course of opening. So for me right now, I mean, out of anything that's really hot, it's speaking. I still feel deeply called to speaking, and I actually have a little event coming up at the end of March on this first day of spring called Get Out and Speak, where I'm there to support other people to get themselves out to speak. So right now, like in the very short term, that's what's happening, speaking and getting out speaking and helping other people to get out speaking. And for the long term, it's, I think the one piece that I can say is not from vision, but from feeling. It feels like I am being magnetized towards a more loving life. And so what that looks like for me starts, of course, with loving myself, but also having the space, like opening up the space for more love to come in the form of, colleagues and friends and lovers. So, yeah.
In that trust and surrender that you just shared with us, what has been for you the toughest thing to allow yourself to surrender?
Yeah, that's going to have to be the story of my son. So after my spiritual awakening, I left the real estate industry behind. I started my own art gallery and healing art center, had that for a couple of years. For 2 years in a row, ran a giant street festival in my city, brought 6,500 people to my city. And then I got online, and I started online in 2008. And in 2008, when I started online, my son was, preteen. And my vision, my dream was that by the time he was an adult, 18, I would, my business would be fully set up, and I would be able to travel anywhere in the world and work virtually. And that actually happened within 17 months. I was very successfully running my business, and made a 6-figure plus business on an annual basis. And he started to go down the hole. So the biggest challenge there was to surrender, feeling like I had to fix him or could fix him in any way. Yeah. And he ended up, making multiple suicide attempts, got involved with heroin, got arrested a few times, attacked me a few times. The final kind of big attack was in 2016, where he locked me in the basement and threatened to cut me up in little pieces when he was high on homeopathic nasal spray, if you can believe it.
Oh my.
And it was in that moment where I was locked in the basement where the fullest amount of surrender I've ever had to conjure it from myself happened. And I gave up my life in that moment. I just said, okay, if this is going to be the end, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to surrender and go. And my only prayer was just like, please don't let it hurt too much. Thankfully, that didn't happen. I didn't physically die, but I definitely, there was a death there. My old name died. I used to be Amethyst Wildfire. Within 3 days, Emerald Peaceful Greenforest emerged. So I changed my name legally for the second time in my life, not counting marriage, changing names. So yeah, the biggest surrender, I think, was surrendering the belief that I could in any way heal, correct, fix, prevent, guide in any way my son's journey. Yeah, that would be the big one.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I want to emphasize here is we have awakenings and we have openings in our lives, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be circumstances that come along as we're walking that path that doesn't open our eyes further or push us in another direction. And they may seem like the end of the world, and in some cases they might end up being the end of your world. But it doesn't stop. It's a journey. We're here on this earth for a journey. And that story I know came from deep inside of you. And it really emphasizes that follow the journey. Understand that your higher self is creating things in front of you to make you step out into the world in even a bigger and broader way. And that's what Emerald is doing, stepping out into the world. Could you share one huge piece of advice before we end our time together today?
Yeah, I think the big piece that I want to offer to people on this show is one of my favorite things to say is clarity is divinity. And I've come to understand that really my only job is to maintain clarity and be aware when I'm unclear and do whatever work is necessary to get clear again. We are here to be channels for the divine expression. And, you can be a plugged up channel that needs some Drano, or you can be a clear channel. And the clearer you keep your channel, the more divinity emanates from you and through you, and as a result, the more divine the world becomes. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your divinity with us. Could you tell people how to get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah. In fact, we can send them to emeraldgreenforest.com/gift, GIFT, where you will find an instant clarity exercise. Speaking of clarity, I forgot all about that. So you can find the instant clarity exercise there, which is an 8-minute meditation to help you if you are stuck in the clouds of confusion.
Excellent. So to learn more about Emerald, I'll put all this information on the show page for you. You'll be able to download the podcast today. You'll be able to find Emerald, download her gift, and get the meditation. Emerald, it was so wonderful to have you here today. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us and share your stories from the heart, which is really going to make a difference in the imagination.
Thank you so much, Vince, for having me. And thank you, Imagination Nation, for awakening. We validate you. I validate you. Yes. Yes, you are awakening. Yes.
Well, on behalf of Mary, my business partner, my wife, and the entire imagination, we wish you a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.